So that after a while, though the ultimate power always continued to remain in the groups, the structure always turned out the same, that servants of the more important services were picked partly by appointment, always subject to check with the group conscience. And in that way, we could get people who were required to do the particular jobs, had the skills, people of excellence for the position. And that's how the structure evolved. Now, parallel to all this, and in fact commencing before it, we had a similar structure for world service down here. That finally evolved, although this took many years to complete it. Many AAs will remember that in 1938 we incorporated something called the Alcoholic Foundation. And among other things, the foundation took up over the book Alcoholics Anonymous, which had been published and financed separately, and therefore it took the trustees, who were composed of non-alcoholics and a few alcoholics, chosen really by Dr. Bob and me. They took over the title to our literature, and we opened a little office. And when the Saturday Post piece came on with all this great flood of inquiries, we cleared most of them. And then we began to get into problems of public relations and all of the things that the World Office does today. And these were all, without exception, chores that could not be performed in many locations. There had to be some had their tail to literature. There had to be some place and somehow of a lot of other services. You could, there had to be some head and tail to public relations. Policies had to be devised and all this sort of thing. Well, for many years, I suppose partly because Bob and I had set it up that way back in '38, before there were any intergroups, this thing refused, at this end, here in New York, refused to evolve. Partly because it was felt that since the groups were having such a hard time to even have a clubhouse without a furor, or to manage their simple affairs, how could we possibly bring traditions to bear on this situation down here? The operation had been very successful. Our friends in a majority on the board, non-alcoholics, as a protection to the vagaries of people like Dr. Bob and me and other alcoholic trustees. Well, this was all in the pot. So what would we do? It took from 1945, just after the tradition came out, to 1951 to persuade everybody concerned that as an experiment, a conference of delegates should be called, at least from the United States and Canada, properly weighted according to population in each locality, to come down here and to take a look at these services, which we who had been running them all these years felt had been invaluable to AA and might have been accountable for 1/2 of our growth and a great deal of unity. So this is how the group conscience came into being. And this is what we mean by AA's trusted servant. Special people selected for their special abilities, but never people who shall govern. Now we come to tradition 3, dealing with this very important matter of membership. We alcoholics have been an ostracized people. Sometimes we have been actual prisoners of society. At all times we have been prisoners of ourselves, you might say. So when AA proffers its hand to the alcoholic, what does the alcoholic want? He wants freedom. He wants to belong. So therefore, we have tried to reduce every possible resistance that he might have. He is generally sore at religion. He is sore at medicine. He is sore at society. Perhaps perhaps at a distance, he has heard that AA is another religious organization and complains that the missions did him in and made him worse. So when he arrives and finds that it is a fact that AA's only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, his relief is immense. When he is told that there is a spiritual quality about it, but this requires no theology or religious belief in the ordinary sense, that the group can be his higher power, then his release and his freedom knows no bounds, and he plunges into the new stream that comes out into a happier and sober life. So therefore, we should keep this door wide open. We cannot put any strictures, and we bind ourselves not to, upon it. We cannot compel the new man to believe anything, to pay anything, to do anything. We actually invite him to disagree with everything we say. And still, if he wishes to stay around, he's an AA if he says so. This is the charter of individual freedom that is portrayed in this most important tradition 3, dealing with membership. Just as tradition 3 is a charter for individual freedom, so is tradition 4 a charter really for group freedom. It poses the question, when is an AA group? Does it have any limitations upon its liberty? And we say no. Each AA group, like the individual, has a right to be wrong. The only thing that we ask, but do not demand, of a group trying for sobriety, who wish to call themselves AA, is that they do not publicly mingle the AA name with some other enterprise. Quite obviously, nobody would be very interested, and it would be a great brewer of trouble were we to talk about Protestant groups and Catholic groups and Republican groups and communist AA groups. This would be absurd and troublemaking on the face of it. So long as their primary purpose is directed towards sobriety and they don't get us married to anyone else, this is our only requirement. Otherwise, they can have it just the way they want it. And the group itself, you must remember from tradition 2, is the ultimate seat of authority for the whole movement. So that even in a town meeting democracy, the strictures upon such bodies are much greater than they are upon an AA group.